Sir Isaac Newton, a titan in the realm of science, reflects a portrait of genius that withstands the test of time. Behind the laws of gravity and principles of classical mechanics lurks a figure who mapped the nature of the universe with mathematics and experiments. Newton's story is not just a narrative of monumental discoveries but also of hidden aspects that stretch far beyond the curtain of common scientific knowledge. Studying Newton creates a paradox. Someone who grounded his knowledge in empiricism and rigorous logic also delved into the mysteries of alchemy and theology. The secret of Newton's genius seems to lie in his ability to navigate both worlds, empirical reality and metaphysical exploration. This raises curiosity. What drove Newton to traverse the labyrinth of the universe's secrets with such dedication? A critical analysis of Newton's work and life must also include personal traits that contributed to his extraordinariness. Known as an intensely private individual often isolated from society, Newton seemed to prefer communication with nature through calculation and experimentation rather than social interaction. He faced personal challenges such as conflicts with peers and periods of depression, which some view as aspects that strengthened his intellectual focus. However, Newton's genius cannot be separated from the context of the scientific revolution era. He stood on the shoulders of previous giants like Kepler and Galileo, aware that he was part of a larger evolution of thought. Nevertheless, his contributions marked a significant leap for what we now know as modern physics. Thus, if we were to delve into Newton's secrets, we might find that the answer is hidden not only in his brilliant mind, but also in his perseverance, hard work, and obsession that sometimes bordered on eccentricity. Newton's secret, after all, might not lie in isolated thoughts, but in the silent dialogue between his personal genius and the collective knowledge of humanity that he enriched and permanently transformed. Sir Isaac Newton, often referred to as one of the most influential scientists of all time, was a multifaceted figure. Born on December 25, 1642, in Woolsthorpe, Lincolnshire, England, Newton's early life was marked by hardship and uniqueness. He was born prematurely and with such fragile health that survival seemed unlikely. His father, also named Isaac Newton, passed away a few months before his birth, and his mother, Hannah Ayscough, remarried when Newton was still young, leaving him to be cared for by his grandmother. Newton's education began at King's School, Grantham, where he showed excellence in learning but often felt alienated from his peers, displaying introverted and withdrawn tendencies. After a temporary withdrawal from formal education to help manage the family estate, Newton eventually convinced his mother of the importance of his education and was allowed to resume his studies. Newton entered Trinity College, Cambridge in 1661 as a subsizar, a kind of position that allowed him to receive a free education in exchange for performing certain duties. At Cambridge, Newton initially studied the standard curriculum, but over time, he became more interested in advanced natural philosophy, drawn to the works of philosophers like Descartes, Kepler, and Galileo. Newton's independent personality motivated him to surpass the given curriculum and pursue independent studies, which became key to his later revolutionary discoveries. The years 1665 and 1666 are known as the Annus Mirabilis, or miraculous years, for Newton, during which he conducted a series of important work during the university closure due to the plague. During this period of isolation, he experimented with prisms and light, leading to the theory of the color spectrum, and reflected on the laws of gravitation and motion, gaining insights into differential and integral calculus. Newton's background and introverted personality, combined with a relatively isolated youth, profoundly influenced his highly focused and often solitary approach to work. Newton's intellectual awakening cannot be separated from the context of solitude and deep personal reflection. Although he was known to have difficult relationships with some contemporaries, including Robert Hooke and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. His ambition to understand nature and the uniqueness of his mathematical and philosophical approach resulted in works that continue to influence science and mathematics to this day. Critical and introspective, Newton's contributions were not only the result of his pure intellectual abilities, but also of the background and deep level of commitment he invested in every intellectual endeavor he pursued. As a crucial foundation for the fields of physics and mathematics, Newton is officially recognized as one of the most successful minds in human history. His contributions as a mathematician, physicist, astronomer, and alchemist not only reshaped the framework of society's thinking at the time, but also laid the foundation for the development of modern science. Newton's intellectual life was marked by his exceptional genius in solving problems. One of his greatest achievements was the formulation of the law of universal gravitation. This concept is so significant that we still use it today to explain various phenomena, from the motion of planets in the solar system to the dynamics of distant astronomical objects. Newton's scientific mindset can be said to be revolutionary, because he didn't just accept existing knowledge but built new understanding through observation, experimentation, and mathematical analysis. Additionally, Newton is also famous for his laws of motion, which are the cornerstone of classical mechanics. These laws have inspired innovation and discoveries in the field of engineering for centuries. However, what truly sets Newton's intellectual life apart is not just the pinnacle of his achievements, but also how he attained them. Newton was known to have an undying dedication to research. He could become fixated on a problem with an intensity rarely found among other scholars. This obsession sometimes isolated him from the outside world, choosing deep solitude as the best environment to work. However, this condition also demonstrates his steadfastness and determination in pursuing scientific truth. On the other hand, Newton is also known to have had a complex and layered personality. His tendency toward introversion, anger, and occasional distrust of others may have driven him further into his own thoughts. Conflicts with Robert Hooke and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz regarding the discovery of calculus are examples of social interactions that were not always harmonious in his life. Newton's intellectual life was also characterized by his interest in alchemy and theology. He spent many years conducting alchemical experiments and studying ancient texts, often searching for hidden codes or messages that he believed could reveal the truth about the universe. This aspect shows how he didn't limit the pursuit of truth only within the strict boundaries of science, and how his enthusiasm for inquiry, the spirit to know, drove him beyond the parameters of scientific knowledge at the time. In retrospect, although Newton made monumental contributions to science, his intellectual life reveals that the process of discovery is not always neat and orderly. The complexity of his thinking, along with his brilliance and eccentricities, placed Newton not only as a scientist but also as an intellectual pioneer, curious about every aspect of reality. His critical attitude and relentless digging solidify him as a genius whose methodology continues to inspire generations of researchers today. Sir Isaac Newton, one of the most influential scientists in history, is often regarded as a symbol of pure genius. However, one of the secrets behind his phenomenal achievements is not just his extraordinary talent, but also his intense hard work and remarkable perseverance. Newton's style of pursuing knowledge and solving problems reveals a critical aspect of what distinguishes exceptional talent from practical accomplishments. Newton is celebrated not only for his laws of motion and universal gravitation, but also for his contributions to optics, mathematics, and classical mechanics. These advancements were not merely the result of chance, but rather the outcome of countless hours of deep study and meticulous experimentation. In the context of hard work, we often assume that geniuses like Newton are born with well-established abilities to grasp complex concepts with little effort. But historical records reveal otherwise. Newton was diligent and methodical in his approach. He isolated himself for long periods, delving deep into his ideas, often placing himself in a state bordering on obsession with the problems he faced. One example of Newton's hard work approach occurred during the period known as the Annus Mirabilis, or miraculous year, 1665 to 1666, when a plague outbreak forced him to retreat to his home. During this period of isolation, Newton seized the uninterrupted time to develop the foundations of calculus, deepen his understanding of motion and gravitation, and conduct a series of optical experiments. This moment, born out of suffering from the plague, actually demonstrates how hard Newton worked to maximize every opportunity for discovery. However, Newton's hard work was not without flaws. He was also known for his easily offended nature and conflicts with scientific rivals such as Robert Hooke and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Bitter disputes over priority of discovery with Leibniz in calculus underscore how Newton's ambition and desire for recognition could overshadow collaborative methods in scientific progress. This shows that hard work can yield sweet fruit, but can also lead to interpersonal tension, especially if not balanced with mediation and cooperation skills. In summary, Newton was not just a randomly emerging genius in history. He was the result of absolute self-dedication to the pursuit of science. His unparalleled creative and innovative qualities were shaped not only by his innate talent, but also by his willingness to work hard, intense concentration, and relentless perseverance. His lesson to us is that even the greatest minds in history are not exempt from the need for a strong work ethic, determination, and deep dedication to realizing their full potential. Newton could be said to be the incarnation of Renaissance maximalism, pursuing knowledge in its entirety and producing world-changing results not just because he could, but because he worked with extraordinary strength and perseverance to make it happen. The death of Sir Isaac Newton, which occurred on March 31, 1727, has given rise to various speculations and studies, given his status as one of the most influential scientists in history. Being the subject of critical scrutiny, both medically and historically, Newton's death is often analyzed to understand aspects of his health and possible factors contributing to his demise. Medically, historical reports indicate that Newton suffered from kidney stones, or what we might know as nephrolithiasis. Throughout his life, he was known to have experienced several severe episodes of pain, which can now be interpreted as kidney stone attacks. In the last months of his life, Newton experienced a significantly more severe condition, described as acute kidney disease with possible other complications. Some argue that excessive mercury in Newton's body, due to sustained exposure during his alchemical experiments, played a role in his declining health. Mercury poisoning or hydrargyria can lead to various disorders, including kidney damage. However, it should be noted that modern testing on Newton's hair, conducted in 1979 by scientists from the University of California, Santa Barbara, showed much lower levels of mercury than previously estimated, possibly disqualifying the hypothesis of chronic mercury poisoning. In addition to medical causes, there is also an equally interesting discussion about philosophical and sociological reflections on Newton's death. As a symbol of scientific progress, discussions about Newton's death often raise questions about how society and scientific traditions treat their pioneers after they pass away. On one hand, there is an almost religious reverence for his legacy. His achievements in science are almost mythical. And on the other hand, there is an acknowledgement that every scientist, no matter how brilliant, remains vulnerable to common biological limitations. There is also critical debate about the intensity and zeal of Newton's work, raising the question of whether his reclusive lifestyle and intellectual intensity might have shortened his life. However, considering his lifespan of 84 years, an exceptionally old age by 18th century standards, such speculations are often considered unfounded. In a historical context, Newton's death is also seen as the end of an era where science, philosophy, and mysticism often intersected. Newton's figure becomes a sort of boundary between the time when modern science separated from the origins of alchemy and metaphysical exploration. All speculations must be approached critically, considering the limitations of medical information from Newton's time. It is important to appreciate the scientific contributions he made without romanticizing the end of his life. Newton's death ultimately reminds us of the duality characteristic of humans, geniuses who are not immune to bodily frailty. Perhaps the greatest lesson from this is in acknowledging humanity even behind the most monumental intellectual capacities. The impact created by his intellectual journey lies not only in his specific discoveries, but also in the new paradigms of scientific thinking he created. However, criticisms are also valid. Can all of his work eventually be replaced by newer understandings? First, let's highlight the revolution that Newton brought with his laws of motion and theory of universal gravitation. Newton's laws of motion form the basis of classical mechanics, providing tools to understand the movement of objects from everyday scales to the motion of celestial bodies. Meanwhile, Newton's theory of gravitation, which describes the attraction between masses, explains phenomena from the falling of an apple to the orbits of planets. Its practical impact. Without this understanding, modern advancements in technology, from building construction to space travel, would likely experience significant delays. However, Newton's influence is not limited to physics alone. In mathematics, the discovery of calculus, often a point of contention between him and Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz, enabled subsequent generations to analyze changes in complex systems, becoming a crucial instrument in the advancement of science and engineering. Nevertheless, criticisms arise from Newton's territorial nature regarding his own discoveries and his attitude toward his colleagues. Disputes with Leibniz over the priority of discovery in calculus are an example of Newton's tendency to fiercely guard his scientific reputation, sometimes at the expense of healthy collaboration. This raises the question, to what extent can scientific progress be acknowledged as the result of collective work rather than the contribution of individual geniuses? On the other hand, Newton's interest in alchemy and theology suggests that our understanding of genius should be broader than just scientific achievements. He spent more time on alchemical texts and apocalyptic interpretations of the Bible than on physics. Although often overlooked or underestimated, this aspect of Newton's work reminds us that even the most analytical minds still seek deeper meanings, and perhaps in these searches we find inspiration for practical science. Newton leaves behind a paradoxical legacy, on one hand creating the foundation of the scientific method, while on the other hand showing that the path to scientific truth is often fraught with conflict and imperfection. Criticisms of Newton do not diminish his genius but place him in a more humane and complex context. As an icon who made significant contributions to science, with all his strengths and weaknesses, he teaches us that every intellectual endeavor is a mosaic of objective discoveries and subjective quests for meaning. Sir Isaac Newton, a figure whose name has become synonymous with genius and discovery, continues to touch every aspect of human intellectual life, even centuries after his death. Widely known as one of the greatest scientists in human history, Newton has left a significant legacy that impacts science, philosophy, and our understanding of the universe. Scientifically, Newton revolutionized the world with his famous laws of motion and universal law of gravitation. He ushered in a new era of rational and empirical thought in mechanics with his monumental work Principia Mathematica, which laid the foundation of classical mechanics. Newton not only laid the groundwork for physics but also made significant contributions to mathematics with the development of calculus, which became a vital tool for scientists and engineers in the future. Philosophically, Newton delved into the principles of the universe in a manner consistent with rationality, but also left room for awe at the greatness and complexity of creation. His methodical and systematic approach to understanding nature laid the groundwork for the application of the scientific method, which became a key element in modern science. Meanwhile, sociolinguistically, Newton's influence was not confined to the scientific community alone. His exploration of the laws of nature was seen as an effort to uncover the secrets of the universe, inspiring generations to pursue science and advance civilization. His inquisitive nature and perseverance in the pursuit of knowledge became symbols of respect for intelligence and dedication. However, Newton was also a figure who, in terms of personality, could be considered a paradox. He was intensely private, often known for his difficult-to-approach demeanor and involvement in academic disputes. His engagement in alchemy and theology also demonstrated that his knowledge was not limited to the material realm. He was also obsessed with the search for metaphysical principles and a deeper understanding of the universe. When discussing the secrets that Newton may have possessed, we can theorize that the greatest secret of geniuses like him lies in their ability to see beyond what others can, to unveil the mysteries of nature with the tools of logic and experimentation, and to remain unsatisfied until the most fundamental answers can be attained. In social judgment, he is a strong example of someone who tirelessly worked for the pursuit of truth, someone who made his life an experimental laboratory, both in thought and practice. His legacy has defined how we understand the world and laid the pillars for scientific progress. Sir Isaac Newton was not just a scientist, he was a visionary whose genius continues to inspire generation after generation, an explorer of timeless secrets, and a cultural treasure of humanity, whose influence remains etched in the history of human knowledge. See you soon. Hope it's useful. Thank you.